And 60-year-old Robert told people he was driving over 600 miles to marry a 30-year-old woman with cerebral palsy. The internet exploded. Some people called him desperate. Others accused him of taking advantage of her. And many believed the relationship could never survive. But what nobody knew was that this young woman had spent most of her life being rejected, ignored, and treated like she wasn't worthy of love. And the man everyone criticized would soon become the one person who completely changed her life forever. By the end of this story, you may never look at love the same way again. Evelyn Carter was only 30 years old, but life had already broken her heart more times than she could count. She was born with cerebral palsy. Walking was difficult. Speaking clearly took effort. Even simple daily tasks could become exhausting. But the hardest part wasn't the condition itself. It was the loneliness. Everywhere she went, people stared. Some spoke to her like a child. Others avoided her completely. And when it came to relationships, most men never looked past her wheelchair. Over time, Evelyn stopped believing love was even possible for her. She spent most nights alone in her small apartment, scrolling through social media and watching other people live the kind of life she secretly dreamt about. Marriage, affection, companionship, someone choosing her. But one night, everything changed. Over 600 miles away lived Robert Mitchell, a 60-year-old widower who had spent years living in silence after losing his wife. His children had grown. His home felt empty, and every single day started feeling exactly the same. Until one evening, he came across one of Evelyn's videos online. She wasn't dancing, wasn't trying to go viral, wasn't pretending to be perfect. She simply spoke honestly about how painful it felt to constantly be overlooked because of her disability. And something about her honesty touched Robert deeply. So he sent her a message. Just 6 simple words. You deserve to be loved too. Evelyn stared at the message for nearly 10 minutes before replying, because nobody had ever spoken to her like that before. What started as one message turned into nightly conversations, then phone calls, then hours of laughter. And slowly, two lonely people began healing each other. But when Robert revealed he wanted to travel 600 miles to finally meet Evelyn in person, the reactions became brutal. Friends warned Robert constantly. They questioned the age gap, questioned Evelyn's condition, questioned his intentions. Some even mocked him openly. Meanwhile, Evelyn faced criticism too. People accused her of being manipulated. Others said the relationship was unrealistic. And after weeks of pressure, Evelyn finally broke down during one phone call and quietly asked, "What if everybody's right?" Robert went silent for a moment. Then he answered with words she would never forget. For once in your life, let somebody choose you without fear. Evelyn started crying instantly because all her life, people focused on what she couldn't do. But Robert only focused on her heart. And 3 days later, Robert packed a suitcase, got into his truck, and began driving 600 miles to see her. The drive took nearly 11 hours. Rain poured heavily across the highway. His truck almost broke down twice. And at one gas station, a stranger asked him why he was traveling so far. When Robert explained, the man looked confused and asked, "Why would you do all that?" Robert smiled softly and replied, "Because she mattered." That simple answer carried him through the rest of the trip. Hour after hour, mile after mile, a 60-year-old man kept driving toward a woman the world kept telling him to ignore. But when Robert finally arrived outside Evelyn's apartment building, what happened next made even strangers emotional. Evelyn waited nervously outside in her wheelchair. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Part of her still feared he wouldn't come because too many people before him had disappointed her. Then suddenly, a great truck slowly pulled into the parking lot. Robert stepped out, and the moment Evelyn saw him, she burst into tears. Robert walked directly toward her without hesitation. Not embarrassed, not uncomfortable, not unsure. He knelt beside her, gently held her hands, and whispered, "I told you I was coming." Evelyn covered her face and cried harder. Neighbors nearby quietly watched the emotional moment unfold. Some even started crying themselves. But because it was obvious, this wasn't pity. This was genuine love. And during dinner that same night, Robert asked Evelyn a life-changing question. "Will you marry me?" A few months later, Robert and Evelyn stood together in a small chapel surrounded by family and friends. The ceremony wasn't luxurious. No giant decorations, no expensive venue. Because it wasn't about luxury. It was about love. None of that mattered because, for the first time in her life, Evelyn felt truly chosen. As Robert held her hands during the vows, his voice cracked with emotion. And then he said, "The world saw limitations, but I saw the woman I prayed for." People throughout the chapel immediately began wiping tears from their eyes. Even Evelyn's mother broke down crying because she once feared her daughter would spend life alone. But now, someone was standing proudly beside her, loving her openly, fearlessly, completely. Today, Robert and Evelyn continue inspiring millions online with their story, not because their relationship is perfect, but because it reminds people of something powerful. Real love is not about perfection. It's not about age. It's not about appearance. And it's definitely not about what society expects. Real love is about seeing someone's soul and choosing them anyway. While the world kept overlooking Evelyn, one man drove 600 miles just to prove she was worthy of being loved. And honestly, this may be the most beautiful part of this entire story.